Hey guys, what's up? Doing alright? Doing good? So I got more crap I wanted to talk about, just because I find it therapeutic. And what else I find therapeutic is a nice, cold glass of iced tea with a shot of Captain Morgan Cannon Blast in it. It's delicious. So I'm imbibing. I'm drinking it right now. On to what I wanted to talk about to myself. I read a few popular Star Wars forums, and of course watch videos and stuff, read the comments, and I'm always taken aback when I see people saying how Last Jedi ruined their liking for Star Wars. Well, that doesn't surprise me. But I keep thinking, what, Force Awakens didn't ruin your liking for Star Wars? I don't understand why it gets a free pass, and that's the topic of today's commentary. First off, it might seem like it, but I'm not a contrarian. I was all aboard the hype train back in 2015. I was looking extremely forward to Episode 7, and I was there at opening night, midnight. I was there. I wasn't dressed in anything, but, yeah, that's right, completely naked. I meant that I wasn't wearing a costume or anything. Actually, nobody was, but I was there. And full disclosure, up until the point that they were escaping onto the Falcon, I distinctively remember having the conscious thought that this is actually a good movie. I was liking it. Then it fell off a cliff, and it kept getting worse and worse by every minute that passed. By the end, I felt pretty insulted. I was actually the first one out of the theater. I don't even think that the credits came up. I was gone. And when I left, I don't know, I was just angry all the way home. The next morning when I let it sink in, I had two thoughts. One, with absolutely no context, it was an average action movie. It didn't really do anything different than any other action movie does. So it's just blah. And two, it was a bloody awful Star Wars movie. And I went in expecting to like it. So it wasn't like I was biased when I sat down, just getting ready to just find everything I didn't like about it. That was not the case at all. In a nutshell, I think it's a very lazily made film in every way possible. Nothing is fleshed out, from the characters, to the world, to the state of the galaxy. There's no progression, no development, no storytelling. Things just happen, and lore gets trampled on. I go into far greater detail about it, and mostly about The Last Jedi in my other video about how Disney is destroying Star Wars. So check that out if you're interested. In any event, the movie came out, and then the praise came. 90 whatever percent on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, and 90, 80 whatever percent from the audience, along with all the gushing and in blogs and videos all over YouTube, and just a smashing success. I can understand the praise from the general audience. Many people I work with saw it, took their kids to see it, and the opinions were fairly similar. They all said how it was fun, and it was exciting and funny, and it was like a thrill ride. I started pointing out all the things that I thought were wrong with it, and they just looked at me with confusion, more or less. When I was saying how one person can't adequately pilot a YT-1300, they looked completely flummoxed. Is that flummoxed? Puzzled? I don't think I know the English today. Anyway, the follow-up question was always, what's a YT-1300? Hey, fair enough. All the problems that I clearly saw, they were completely oblivious to. So none of that stuff was factored into their opinion. That's fine. So it kind of made sense to me why the casuals would like it. They're not familiar with it, so they're not seeing what I'm seeing. They're not even looking for what I'm looking for. But what I couldn't really understand was the praise that it was getting from actual Star Wars fans. The group that it's safe to say has seen all the movies countless times. People who would know a good place to get power converters. I would go into discussion forums and just get blasted for even suggesting that something might be wrong with this movie. It was amazing to me. I kept thinking, can't you guys see any of this? Are you blind to it, or do you just not care? It was like most saw little fault anywhere, which was quite shocking. Maybe for a few months after it was out, I can understand the blind gushing. At least from those infected with Phantom Menace syndrome. Phantom Menace syndrome? Yeah, there was an outbreak back in '99, I think. The symptoms include irrational behavior, hallucinations, impaired judgment, running out of movie theaters with hands flailing, saying that you just saw the best Star Wars movie ever. We've seen the videos, and I say this having liked the prequels. So I figured that the honeymoon would wear off and people would finally start seeing what some of us were bringing to light from the start. Maybe some did, but I did some thinking. Deep thinking. I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on now, and I encourage everyone to join me. Everyone ready? All three of you? I think that a lot of people were mentally conditioned into liking The Force Awakens. Let's examine how the psychologists and the analytics department made people blindly love this movie without even knowing why. Disclaimer. I understand that all things in life, including movies, are entirely subjective, so that previous sentence was intentionally dripping in hyperbole. Or maybe I did really mean it. Phase 1. Blockbuster analytics. In short, what movies have the broadest appeal, make the most money, and what characteristics do they all have in common? Statistically, the action genre is on top, so start there. Simple storylines, simple characters, lots of explosions and CGI action, lots of jokes. That seems to be what people like, so we'll just base everything around that. Phase 2. Market research. The prequel trilogy had similar popular complaints, so steer clear of all of them. Wooden acting? Well, now we have overacting. How many times did Rey just sit and stare a little too intently at something, or get irrationally angry and start yelling at someone? How often was hardened soldier Finn overly excited about the littlest things? Who spiked his drink with ecstasy? Politics! Well, now we have no politics. And just to make sure that they don't accidentally involve politics, might as well put the entire Republic in one little place and blow it all up, just to be on the safe side. Related to that, the prequels were a little too boring in large stretches, like this video. Now we get wall-to-wall action, with little breaks in between them. This film can be many things, but boring certainly will not be one of them. Overindulgence in CGI environments? Well, they did exist in the new one, but they kept reminding everyone, and I think they still are, about all the practical effects and real environments that they shot in. Misa Jar Jar Binks! We're going underwater, okie day? Excuse me. Gone is the annoying CGI embodiment of goofy slapstick. Replaced by everyone with dialogue. Even the villain Kylo tries to get the audience to laugh on several occasions. I think Snoke is the only one who didn't try to do something humorous. I could be wrong. I can't remember. Did he? I forget. But Jar Jar is nowhere to be found, so it's all good. The main character was generally unlikable in the prequel trilogy. Now? Rey? Maybe they missed one. Oh, and make sure you begin the movie with the character saying, "This will begin to make things right." You know what we mean. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So mission mostly accomplished. Distance yourself from any resemblance at all to the, quote, hated prequels. And that really took on a life of its own. Not to say that a bunch of people weren't feeling disappointed or underwhelmed with the prequels, but hatred? I personally think a good portion of those sentiments comes from parroting the thoughts of others who blasted them on social media over the years. I'm looking at Plinkett. It's kind of like how NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell gets mercilessly booed at the draft every year. Most people booing him don't dislike him, it's just the in thing to do, so everyone does it. Sheep be sheep. Phase 3. Psychological warfare. I have a friend with no life who started going through Force Awakens and noted every time that there was an attempt at humor. He stopped after 41 minutes, and there were 22 attempts at humor through that point. So on average, an attempt at humor every minute and 51 seconds. They went above and beyond to try to make people laugh. I know, I'm saying it like it's a bad thing. I get that, I understand that. Why should we have any fun in movies? That's not what I'm getting at. That's not what I'm saying. According to psychologists and studies, the act of laughing releases dopamine, which makes us feel happy. People tend to laugh easier when others are laughing, kind of like a yawn. A group of laughing people, such as in a movie theater, creates an internal and external feedback loop of positive emotions. More happiness for all. Also in play is nostalgia. Whether it's Anakin's lightsaber, Vader's helmet, the hollow chessboard, R2, the Kessel Run line, X-Wings, TIE fighters, the trash compactor line, the familiar cantina scene, the Falcon itself, the plot itself, or other callbacks, everywhere you look, there are feel-good moments that make you fondly think, I remember that. Oh, did you see that? That's Luke's training remote! It's a satisfying trip down memory lane. Brings a smile to your face. According to psychologists and studies, nostalgia has a positive effect on mental well-being. It boosts positive feelings. It makes people feel better and happier in the moment. So, opposite of the common things that were disliked about the prequel trilogy, check. Try to make people lose consciousness from laughter, thumbs up. Incorporate a gluttony of fan service to constantly remind everyone about the good old days of Star Wars, check. Would it be outlandish to suggest that Force Awakens was 2 hours of mental conditioning? Psychology put into practice? A real-life Jedi mind trick, if you will, to make people like it without even knowing why they like it? If people walk out of the theater feeling dazed by nostalgia, and also happily relieved that it wasn't anything like the prequel trilogy that they might have been conditioned to hate, it would make sense to form positive associations with what they just saw, regardless of quality. Maybe even ignoring or not even noticing the paper-thin story in a paper-thin world with paper-thin characters doing things that don't make any sense within a Star Wars context. Just something to think about. A very legitimate complaint about how it was a blatant copy of A New Hope was eventually defended. At first, people argued heatedly that it wasn't a copy. Even when people were making videos of them side by side, they still just ignored it and said, no, you're just doing that. That's not really there. But over time, they came around and acquiesced to the fact that it actually was a copy. But then they started to echo how they had to do that, how they had to play it safe in making a completely unoriginal film, because of the prequels, the go-to excuse for everything. Like I said, I don't understand how so many people think that Force Awakens was good, but at the same time, The Last Jedi made them want to jump off the Disney cruise ship. It doesn't make sense to me. What are the main complaints of Last Jedi? They assassinated Luke's character? Well, Han's character was assassinated too, wasn't it? Just like Luke, Han also was a broken down grump who wanted no part of what was going on. The only reason he got involved was to try to get his son back. Just like the only reason that Luke eventually got involved was to save Leia. The plot? People didn't care for the plot? Force Awakens plot was nothing to write home about either. For one, we've seen it before, and two, it was an endless string of conveniences from start to finish. Too much forced humor in The Last Jedi? 1 minute, 51 seconds. Force Awakens. The Last Jedi didn't build off of the last movie? Well, Force Awakens didn't either. It didn't really even build off of the original trilogy at all. Must I go on? The same complaints apply to both. So why is Force Awakens considered a good addition to the franchise? Is it simply because it's not the prequel trilogy? Is that where everything is based off of? Well, that would make it good not because of what it is, but because of what it's not. Which doesn't really make sense. Or is it because it's such a simple movie that outside of the lore there isn't much of any substance to sink critical teeth into? Or maybe everyone's brainwashed? It's not like I'm intent on disliking Disney Wars, no matter what they do. I grew up on the original trilogy. I have issues with the prequel trilogy, but I still like them. I liked the Clone Wars series. I more or less liked Rebels. I went into Force Awakens fully expecting to like it, and not. Their programming didn't work on me. Hey, I could finally relate to Finn in some way. Programmed my whole life to do one thing, love Star Wars, and I made a choice. So I think I'm done. So have a good one. Hey, don't forget to take your tinfoil hats off.